Dear students, today I am in the second chapter of class 12th biology, that is reproduction in flowering plants. As we all are aware that flower is the main part of the plant that helps in sexual reproduction. It consists of four whorls: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Androecium, it is the group of stamen, whereas gynoecium, it is the group of pistils. In this diagram, you can just see a stamen with the mature dihyst anther, the powder, yellow powder which you normally see. These are the pollen grains or the microspore. In this video, I'm just going to discuss how these microspores or this yellow powder which you have seen are being formed. The process of formation of the microspores is known as macrosporogenesis. The flow chart shows that the macrosporogenesis takes place in the sporogenous tissue of the anther. The sporogenous tissue consists of the sporogenous cells which are diploid. They undergo meiosis, forms the macrospore tetrad. The macrospores separate out and they are being dispersed when the anther dies. This picture shows the section of a flower with the different parts. Here you can see the sepal, the petal, the stamens. Each stamen now consists of two parts, the filament as well as the anther. Here you can see in this diagram, the anther is a bilobed structure and each lobe of the anther is dithecous. It means it has got the two lobes. When we cut the section of the anther, we see the four lobes in it and each lobe is known as the Microsporogenesis. This is the section of the mature dihyst anther which shows the four Microsporogenesis. 1, 2, 3 and the 4. I just told you about the theca here. So theca means here this is the one lobe and this is the another lobe of the anther. Now each lobe, when I said that consists of the two theca, it means these two thecas, these two compartments or the sporangia here, they are connected with a common wall here by which this dies. This is known as the stomium. You can say that the anther burst at the stomium and the macrospores or the pollen grains liberate out or they just move out. Let us see now the detailed view of one microsporangium. Each microsporangium, it consists of the epidermis, outermost wall, known as epidermis. Inner to it is the endothecium. Then there are three middle layers. Then inner to the middle layer, here you can see this one which I have just marked here. This one is the tapetum and inner to the tapetum, this complete mass, this is the sporogenous tissue. All these layers normally they protect the sporogenous tissue. Tapetum plays a very important role over here because it nourishes the developing microspores which are formed inside this sporogenous tissue. Now, how the macrospores are formed in the sporogenous tissue? Inside the sporogenous tissue, the cell which undergoes meiosis is known as microspore mother cell. You can see the first meiosis is taking place. Then the first meiosis, two nuclei are being formed. Then the second meiosis, which results in the formation of the four cells which are also called the four microspores. This is also called the macrospore tetrad. If we just see a detailed view, then you can see here each macrospore, it consists of the outer wall which is thick. Even in this last diagram you can just see this one. This is called the exine and is thick due to the presence of a chemical substance known as sporopollenin. The inner wall is known as the intine, which is thin, and inside it, the mature macrospore dices at two-cell stage. The first cell in this diagram, you can just say, see, the macrospore consists of the two cells. The bigger cell is called the vegetative cell, and the smaller one is known as the generative cell. 60% of the plants, the macrospores are liberated at two cell stage, whereas remaining in some three cell stage or the three nuclear stages. Three nucleus means here one is the vegetative cell and the generative nucleus it derives from the two male gametes or the male nuclei. So we normally call it a three nucleated or the three cells, three nucleated stage generally we say. This is the structure of a mature pollen grain where you see the outer wall, it is the exine, the next one is the intine, and here the two compartments, the two cells, one is the vegetative cell and the other is the generative cell. Vegetative cell helps in the formation of the pollen tube, whereas the generative, the nucleus of the generative cell, it divides into two nuclei which are called the male gametes, which help in fertilization or as well as formation of the endosperm, which is known as double fertilization. This picture shows the various stages in the development of the pollen grain. Here at the last you can see that the development of the pollen tube in the mature and macrospore, and this pollen tube it is formed on the stigma. So here you can see the different types or different shapes of the pollen grains, and all the pollen grains, the outer surface you can say that is rough due to, again I'm repeating the term, sporopollenin. It is a chemical substance that forms the exine. Remember that exine is not continuous at every places. There are some places where the exine, in the exine, where the sporopollen is very thin. These areas are called the germ pores, from where the pollen tube emerges out. Now these pollen grains especially, they are being transferred from one flower to the another, which is known as the pollination. Insects also play a very important role in the transfer of pollen grains from one flower to the another. So a term generally being asked sometime, pollen kit. There's a bit confusion in the term pollen kit. What is it? Pollen kit means it is a covering of yellow sticky substance which is present on the surface of the pollen grains. It normally makes the pollen grains sticky on the body of the insects, so that which helps in the pollination. Once the pollen grains are shed, question comes for how long the pollen grains are viable. Viable means they can survive. In different plants, so have the different time. Like if I talk about the cereal plants like the wheat, the time of the viability is for 30 seconds, whereas the members of Rosaceae, Leguminosae, Solanaceae, they survive for few months, and if you want for much more time, then they can be even stored in the liquid nitrogen at the temperature minus 196 degrees centigrade. Finally, we come to the pollen, the role of pollen or the economic importance of the pollen. Till now, we know that the pollen helps in the fertilization and which leads into the formation of the seed generally. Pollens also are being used as the food supplements as they are rich in various nutrients as well as the vitamins. The pollen tablets, the pollen honey is being used by the athletes as well as the horses to boost up the energy. You can see the bee pollen over here, which is being used as a supplement. This is all for the today. We'll be continuing with the same lesson in the next video. Thank you very much.